What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. Up next are the Texas Longhorns, the team that, of course, made a college football playoff appearance last year in 2023. Before we preview their schedule for 2024 and also give them an early projected record based on their schedule as well, let's take a look at what this Texas team did back in 2023. Here are my projections and predictions last year for the Texas Longhorns. As you can see, my projection was 9-3 for this team last year in 2023. And then my prediction for them in 2023 was also 9-3. But Texas did a lot more better than that. This team went 11-1 last year, as we're basing this off of the regular season, of course. But if you count the Big 12 championship and, of course, the playoff semifinal loss, this Texas team went, of course, like 12-2 overall. But again, they went 11-1 last year in 2023. Here was a look at the schedule last year for Texas, of course, playing in their last year in the Big 12. They, of course, played Rice, Alabama on the road, and Wyoming here in the non-conference. That Alabama game was their toughest non-conference schedule last year, but they definitely won that game, won that game by 10 points on the road at Tuscaloosa. So that was probably the biggest win that Texas had in the non-conference. And then you look at the Big 12, they really lost coming last year to Oklahoma there in Dallas. That was a very good back and forth type game there back on October the 7th, and it was Oklahoma that came out on top of the victory. But still, Texas made it to the Big 12 championship last year, and also this was their last year, of course, in the Big 12 as well. They are officially going to be a member of the SEC in 2024. So let's now look ahead to 2024, and here is that schedule for Texas in 2024. Before we go game by game and give you each and every single individual game on this schedule, let's take a look at who Texas will play in the non-conference. So they get 4 non-conference games here. They'll play Colorado State, Michigan on the road, UTSA, and ULM, also known as ULM Monroe. So they will play 4 non-conference games here. And again, that Michigan game is one of the biggest non-conference games, I believe, coming up for the 2024 college football season. And I think I said that in my Michigan video, that this is one of the biggest non-conference games coming up as well. So Texas will play Michigan on the road. That makes the non-conference schedule a little bit tough, but other than that, not really any other big challenges here in this non-conference schedule for the Longhorns. Let's now go back to the schedule here. So let's go game by game now and preview this schedule here for 2024 for Texas. They will start off the season, of course, against Colorado State here at home on August 31st. Then there's that big game on the road at Michigan here on September the 7th. And like I said, a very tough place to play here at Michigan, but it should be a very interesting non-conference game here. 2 really good, talented teams here going at it here in week number 2 of this season. And then they play UTSA and ULM Monroe here on September 14th and September 21st. And then they open up SEC play here at home against Mississippi State here on September 28th. So looking at the month of September, they do play 3 straight home games after that Michigan road game. It's a very big possibility that Texas could start out 4-1 or maybe 5-0 if they were somehow to pull off a huge win on the road at Michigan. So now they get to the month of October here. They'll have a bye week in the first weekend of the month of October. Of course, they'll play rival Oklahoma here on October 12th in Dallas. This is a rivalry game. You never know what could happen, but revenge factor is on the minds here for Texas against Oklahoma here on October the 12th. And then after that rivalry game, they do play Georgia here at home on October 19th. Another big-time game here. Of course, Texas will play this game at home. Georgia is a very talented team, of course. They won the back-to-back national championships in 2021 and 2022, but both of these teams are very talented, and this might be a really big dogfight in this game. So they get Georgia at home here on October the 19th, and then they play Vanderbilt on the road after that on October 26th to close things out in the month of October. Then they get a bye week after that Vanderbilt game, and then it's Florida here at home on November 9th. Then it's Arkansas on the road on November 16th, and then they play Kentucky here on November 23rd. And then they close things out here with Texas A&M on the road on November 30th. So that's the schedule here for Texas in 2024, and also heading into their first year in the SEC of 2024 as well. So you look at this schedule for Texas in 2024, it's a little bit of a tough schedule when you got Michigan out of the non-conference here on the road. You got Georgia at home at least, but then you got Oklahoma here in a rivalry game. That will be very interesting to watch, of course. And then Texas A&M here on the road. They're bringing back this rivalry, of course, here. That should be a very interesting game there. Very tough place to play, but it'll be a very interesting game there to watch. But looking at this schedule, again, your toughest games, in my opinion, for Texas are definitely Michigan, Oklahoma, and Georgia. So I think those are your three toughest games here on this schedule. But let's now get to the projection here for this Texas team. Again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule really is. And this is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, these are games where Texas has no chance of winning. 20% games in the orange, these are games where Texas will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40% games in the yellow, these are games where Texas will be about a touchdown of an underdog in the yellow at 40%. 50-50 games in the white, these are games that can go either way. I forgot to mention, you probably won't see any of those red, orange, and yellow games on here because we know Texas will be favored in almost every single one of their games. This is a very talented team that returns Quinn Ewers back at quarterback. 60% games in the purple, these are games where Texas will be favored by at least a touchdown. 80% games in the blue, about a couple touchdowns. And then 99% games, those are your easy wins here in the green by more than 3 touchdowns. So that's the percentage that will start here with this projection for Texas. So let's start with the green games here, the games that Texas will be favored by a lot, and they should take care of business in all these games. And I think you got 5 of them on this schedule. Colorado State, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, and of course Vanderbilt here on the road. Colorado State, UTSA, and UL Monroe are pretty much over 95%. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt are probably at that 90% mark since they are SEC games. Both Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, though, they were the worst teams in the SEC last year in both of their divisions. I don't really see both of these teams being really good. Mississippi State, it's kind of like a rebuild there for that program. Like I said, they're going to have a new head coach and everything. And then for Vanderbilt, just things have not gone their way in the few years for that program either. So Vanderbilt here on the road. These are pretty much easy wins here for Texas. I don't really see, Colorado State, UTSA, and UL Monroe, over the 90, at 90%, maybe over 95%. But Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, since they are SEC games, you can probably put those at 90% and everything. So these are the games where I think Texas will be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. All right, how about the blue games? The games where Texas will be favored by a couple touchdowns in the blue at 80%. I think you got 3 of them on this schedule. I think you got Florida here, Arkansas on the road, and then Kentucky here at home. These are all the games here in the month of November. I think Texas will be favored by a couple touchdowns. Florida's got a lot of question marks. Don't know what the roster is going to look like for them. And also, this is another program that's been kind of a downfall, in the last 2 years, and also ever since Billy Napier's kind of arrived down there at Florida. Things have just not gone their way, and I think Texas playing at home, I think there will be about a couple touchdowns of, favorites in this one. If this game was on the road at Florida, I would definitely put it in the purple. I'm going to put it here in the blue since they're at home in this game. And then Arkansas here on the road on November 16th. This is another game that I do expect that Texas will be favored by a couple touchdowns. I know it's on the road, but Arkansas wasn't very good last season. And also, this is based off of where the teams were last season, so that's the reason why I got Arkansas here in the blue. And then, of course, Kentucky here. Kentucky could be a very sneaky good team in the SEC this year, but I'm going to go with a blue game here with Texas. And I think playing at home, there'll be at least a couple touchdowns of favorites in all 3 of these games. So those are the games where I think Texas will be favored by a couple touchdowns. Now we go to the purple games, the games where Texas will be favored by at least a touchdown. And I think you got one game here on this schedule, and that's on the road at Texas A&M. I know this is a rivalry game. You never know what can happen, but Texas A&M is going to have a new head coach this year. And plus, I don't really know about their roster talent either. I think they had some guys in the transfer portal due to Jimbo Fisher being fired from last season. So again, Texas Texas A&M will have a new head coach this year. Very tough place to play at Texas A&M, but I think Texas will be a slight favorite in this one. And like I said, I'm being fair here. This game is not in a blue or like green game. This game's in the purple just because it's on the road. So I think Texas will be a slight favorite by a touchdown in that Texas A&M game. And I think those are all the games that Texas will be favored in, the green, blue, and then that one game in the purple against Texas A&M. And then you look at the rest of the games here. I don't have any underdog games for Texas. I think the rest of the 3 games that you're seeing here on this schedule, Michigan on the road, Oklahoma and Dallas, and then Georgia here at home, I think these are your 50-50 games. I think all these games can go either way. Michigan on the road is a very tough one. That game is on the road. If this game was at home for Texas, I would probably favor, Texas in this one, just because they're going to have a lot of talent coming back this year. Michigan going to lose a lot of talent from that national championship team that they had. But it is on the road. I can't really predict it to be a, favorite type of game here for Texas. This game pretty much is a 50-50 game in my opinion. That Oklahoma game, that's a 50-50 game as well. Pretty much a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. The game was really close last year between these two teams. Came down to a game-winning touchdown. And then Georgia here at home. I think Texas playing at home, that gives them confidence going into this game against Georgia. Georgia, I think, clearly the team that's going to be the favorites to win it all in the SEC this year. But Texas will be ready. I think they'll be ready for this game. And I think, as of right now, I think this is a 50-50 game as well. So all 3 of these games, Michigan on the road, Oklahoma and Dallas, and then Georgia here at home, these are your 50-50 games in my opinion for Texas. Let's now get a projected record here for this Texas team. So if you count all the games that Texas will be favored in the green, blue, and then that one game in the purple for Texas A&M, and then you count these 50-50 games, you split those as well. The overall projected record for this Texas team comes out to be 11-1 for 2024. So Michigan, Oklahoma, and Georgia, you probably split those games. Let's say they win probably like 1 out of those 3 games, or maybe like 2 out of those 3 games perhaps. Let's say they lose on the road at Michigan. They probably both beat Oklahoma and Georgia. And then let's say if they lose to Michigan on the road, and then they, like I said, lose to Oklahoma and Georgia. That's how they can come out with an 11-1 projection. Maybe that one loss comes to Michigan on the road, and then those 2 other wins come to Oklahoma and Georgia. But I think the overall projection comes out to be 11-1. I do see Texas being really good this year. And I also think, like I said, these 50-50 games, you can split those 3 games and everything. Let's say they win 2 out of those 3 games. And, I think playing Georgia at home gives them confidence. And I think, playing Michigan on the road will especially be tough, but, playing Oklahoma and Dallas, that's a very winnable game there. Plus, that's a neutral site game. We have to split that game also in the regular season compared to these other games. So I think Texas, their projection for me will be 11-1. I think, I could see this team perhaps going 12-0. That would very be impossible there with this kind of schedule with Georgia and Michigan on the schedule. But 10-2, I think, would likely be possible as well. If they go 9-3, that would just be a very big disappointment just because of this team going to the college football playoff last year. But this is my projection here for 2024 for the Texas Longhorns. Let me guys know what you think about this Texas team. What do you think their projected record is in 2024? And also give me your best case scenario and worst case scenario for this Texas team down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.